Ladies and gentlemen, the 2023 PFL playoffs are officially here, and joining me today to talk about it is an MMA icon and one of my favorite fighters of all time. He's the natural, Randy Couture. Champ, I appreciate you dropping by my show. Here we are a few months down the road. We chatted in the Challenger Series. The PFL playoffs are upon us. How excited are you to watch these great fights?
Man, very excited. It's been a tremendous season, some amazing fights throughout the regular season, and that bodes well for the playoffs because we're getting down to crunch time, and the guys are gonna and gals are gonna be on. So they're definitely gonna bring it. It's gonna be a blast.
Since the last time we spoke, Francis Ngannou has signed with the PFL. There's a lot of talk about his boxing fight with Tyson Fury, but I'm not going to ask you about that. I'm more curious to get your perspective. This is a person that I feel is synonymous with your gym. He's somebody that I know that you know fairly well. He
Mhm.
comes into the PFL fold not only as a fighter, but as a partner. And the PFL is really going to be leaning on him to help lay a foundation to start up an organization in Africa. Can you tell me a little bit, like, who is Francis as a businessman, and what sort of vision and what sort of value add is he going to be able to bring PFL in his new role?
Yeah, well, I've been very, very impressed with Francis. We just came off of a bunch of meetings with the Saudi Arabians about Middle East, PFL Middle East and PFL Africa, North Africa, MENA. He had a lot of input in a lot of those meetings with a lot of the combative sports federations and the minister of sport in that country and in that region. And they're closely related because they share some geography. So there's going to be a lot of synergy between PFL Middle East and PFL Africa. And I was very, very impressed with Francis and everything that he contributed to those meetings. His clear vision for how we're going to develop some talent and give folks in that part of the world the opportunities that he struggled and fought so hard for over his journey through, from Cameroon into Europe and eventually to the US to become the fighter that he is today. So, man, I'm as impressed with the diligence, work ethic, and the humble attitude that he's had at Extreme Couture since he showed up there. I was even more impressed with his business savvy and his clear vision of what he wants to do in Africa with PFL.
Of course, we are looking forward to Francis Ngannou's fight when he puts on the 4 ounce gloves in the PFL's pay per view super fight division. He'll be making his debut at some point in 2024. And
Yeah.
an interesting sidebar about that is when I talk to other fans, when I talk to other media personalities, we talk about Kayla Harrison right away. And we talk about, like, well, she hasn't fought quite yet. Who knows what the PFL is doing with her? And I quickly say, well, she's in the pay-per-view super fight division. That's what that's going on with her. And they're probably putting together some sort of crazy fight for her. I would imagine she'll be part of the plans at the tail end of the calendar year. With that being said, she's been on interviews before, and she's a fighter. She lost her belt. She sees
Yep.
Pacheco getting all the success, and she wants that one back. And then there are other
Yeah.
things working on off to the side. And I'd like to, just kind of pick your brain about that. If if we were back in the day and there was such a thing as PFL and you've made the move over, you would be in this super fight division. And you fought in the UFC title fights before, you've won them, you've come up short, and you're trying to advise Kayla Harrison based on maybe some of your experience and how she might be feeling. What are some of the themes that you would share with her that might help her out?
Well, I understand where she's at, and you're absolutely correct. She's like, no, I want to be in the regular season. I want that rematch with Pacheco. We have a fair chance that we'll end up in the finals again. I want that fight back, and I'm sure her management, her coaching staff is like, whoa, easy, cowgirl. Settle down. You've earned, yeah, and I know you want the fight back, and I think you'll get that fight back at some point for sure. And let's talk about Larissa. I mean, Larissa's literally over the 5 year and 5 season progressed to this point where she's not just competing with someone like Kayla Harrison, but actually had an amazing performance to win the title last season. So I understand both of their perspectives and wanting to, see that. And I think that that's going to be a huge fight down the road in the pay-per-view model for the PFL as well, because I don't think Larissa's going anywhere anytime soon. She's obviously shown that she can make it at 145. She can settle into that weight class and be just as effective and just as explosive as she was at 155. We know Kayla can make 145 as well. She did that in the Invictus in the offseason when COVID had everybody pinned down, and she went and made 145 and fought in Invictus. So I think you're going to see that rematch in the pay-per-view model, and Kayla will get her shot at redemption for sure. She just has to be a little more patient. And, I get it. The clock's ticking. It's tough to be patient when you want to compete. And I think she's the best pound-for-pound athlete in the women's divisions, and that's not taking anything away from Larissa Pacheco. I think Larissa's come into her own and at the top of her game right now, which makes for a collision course for these two amazing athletes who've already competed 3 times against each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds.
And to your point, Champ, there was one interesting thing that might be of relevance here. Elena Kolesnyck is going to be squaring off against Larissa Pacheco for the third time as well. And what's interesting is it took Pacheco 2 cracks at Kayla Harrison to finally figure out what the formula is to get a victory off of her. How can Elena Kolesnyck do the same? Pacheco is a fighter she struggled with. Pacheco's gotten her out of there 2 times before. Of course, Elena's at your gym as well. This is probably another gal that you know fairly well. How can Elena Kolesnyck shock the world and beat Larissa Pacheco in advance?
I think the model for beating Larissa has been set by Kayla Harrison. You have to go back and look at some of those fights and how she did that. But you also have to analyze how far Larissa has come and what she's changed in her abilities and capabilities. So Elena's got a very strong striking background, but that's also where Larissa seems to want to operate. Larissa has some amazing power, accurate punching, and some intensity and ferocity that you got to be ready for. And I think if you can weather that early storm, force her to wrestle more, attach yourself to her, work in that clinch, put her on the ground if you can, make her work off of her back and spend some of that energy, take a little of that pop out of her as you move into the 3rd and 4th round. You've got a fair chance at beating Pacheco potentially, but it's going to be tough. And Elena, being the game fighter that she is and the attitude that she has, she wants to step in the pocket and she wants to bang. And that's a little tougher recipe to beat someone like Larissa Pacheco, at least at this stage of the game for her. That makes for a very interesting, very exciting fight. These 2 girls are going to come and get after it for sure. It's going to be explosive. I think experience-wise, the nod goes to Larissa Pacheco. I think we've seen the diligence of Elena Kolesnyck and just how far she's come in just a couple seasons, how much she's improved physically and tactically. And I think that Pacheco better not overlook her. Or if she does, if she's looking to that final and she's overlooking Kolesnyck, then that's going to be a mistake. And I don't think that she'll do that, but she better be on point because I know Kolesnyck wants this match and she wants to bang. You better be ready for that.
Here's a match that I want to see, and it really wasn't supposed to happen. It's coming to us as a result of circumstances and fate, whatever you want to call it. But now we have the fight that we've all been wanting to see, Clay Collard going up against Shane Burgos. You're talking about 2 violent fighters that are intent on putting up a show. This was a fight that really wasn't supposed to happen. But as I stated before, Burgos finds himself in a position where he's inserted in the PFL playoffs. What's your take on this matchup? I mean, this is there's so many things here to bite off on.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Style matchups make fights, and this is an amazing style matchup. Both these guys are wide open. Clay said, I want to welcome him to the PFL. He would have liked to have fought him right out of the gate. And I'm like, man, are you crazy? I don't think anybody wants to fight this guy right out of the gate. But that's Clay Collard, and it's tough not to root for a guy like that has that attitude. We've seen Clay change his camp. We've seen Clay start incorporating a lot more grappling and wrestling into his fighting style. Those are things that bode well for him against a guy like Shane Burgos. Now, Clay has a tendency to want to stand in the pocket and show off those boxing skills. And with a guy like Shane Burgos, that is very risky. This guy has the ability to put anybody away. He's as explosive as they come. So I think you're going to see Clay rely on this new coaching staff, these new skills that he's sharpened up and made a bigger part of his game in the wrestling and the ability to not just stand in the pocket and bang. That's going to make for a very interesting matchup. You saw what Olivier Aubin-Mercier did with Shane Burgos in the first fight. He was able to tie him up, smother him, ride his back, make it difficult. He wasn't silly enough to stand around in front of Shane Burgos and try and trade punches. And that's going to have to be your approach with a guy like Shane Burgos. You're going to have to grapple with him. You're going to have to tie him up, try and take some of that steam out of him, frustrate him, not let him just get into that rhythm and stand in front of him and let those hands go, because that's what he's amazing at. So it's going to be a really interesting fight. Can Clay stay, disciplined enough not to get drawn into that big firefight and that big banging match that Shane Burgos wants? And can he use this new team and this new insurgents and energy that he's brought into this season to get through a big fight like that and get himself finally to the finals? It's been a long road for him, and it's tough, honestly, not to root for a guy with the attitude and everything that he's been through, the tragedy in his family life and all of that stuff. So it's a great fight. I mean, one of many in these 3 playoff shows coming up.
One of the questions I had for you, Champ, about Burgos in particular, when he fought Yamato Nishikawa, were you a little surprised that Shane engaged in the grappling as much as he did? He needed a finish, and he decided to go for the grappling. Obviously, we know elbows aren't allowed in the PFL. That kind of takes away some tools from the toolbox. But were you at all surprised about how he pursued his last matchup, knowing that he needed a finish to advance?
Yeah, I think everybody, and we talked a little bit about that in the booth, was that tactically the way to go to get what he needed to put himself in the best position to make the playoffs. And I think all of us assessed that, man, this isn't where you're strongest. Why are you choosing to compete with this guy on these terms when he has everything he needs to force this guy to bang with him and put him in a position to get those bonus points and get that finish. But I think sometimes he wanted to show that he had other abilities and he wasn't just this raw guy that's going to come in and try and punch you in the mouth. He had a lot of other skills and skill sets, and he wanted to use those, show that he is capable of fighting, a strategic fight and not just be this raw banger. And I think that's the only thing that makes sense as to why he would choose in that situation to fight that way.
My final question for you is simply this. Like, I look and when I think about the 2023 season and just the PFL in general, I can't help but think about the acquisition of talent. The PFL has done an amazing job of acquiring some of the best and brightest promising talent all over the world. And there are 2 fighters that really stick out to me: Gabriel Braga, that we'll see very, very soon, and then Evelyn Martins as well. Martins, she's no longer in the playoffs, or she didn't qualify for the playoffs, but she's not even 21 years old. And I am just thoroughly impressed. You see who she's fighting against and how technically sound she is. I can't help but think you might have a future Kayla Harrison on your hands. And I just want to ask you, is there a young, promising talent from 2023 from that you've witnessed, whether it be from the Challenger Series or one of the showcase bouts, that you are just thoroughly impressed with?
Well, I'm certainly impressed with Evelyn Martins, and to have somebody like Kayla Harrison say, "No, I train with this gal. This gal brings it. She is good everywhere," and you see that, and she has this willingness just to wade through and continue to plod forward. It's exciting. It's fun, and she's got a very, very bright future as such a young athlete. Obviously, Jesus Pinedo and what he pulled off coming out of the Challenger Series, making it in, to the later fights, fighting last year's champ, and to come out and land that knee the way he did. Everybody just went, "Oh my God, what just happened?" It was remarkable. And now he's up against Bubba Jenkins. I mean, that's going to tell the tale right there for that division, probably. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how Jesus deals with Bubba and this version of Bubba, because Bubba is, I think, better now than we've seen him. He's settled down. He's settled into himself. We're seeing a much more humble hardworking, willing to get after it Bubba Jenkins than we've seen in the past, and that's a tough Bubba Jenkins to deal with. So that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out as well.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the action will start on August 4th in San Antonio. You are not going to want to miss this fight that happens, as well as the other ones that are going to be taking place throughout the rest of the month. Champ, I appreciate your time today, and thank you for giving me your insight. And I look forward to hearing you call these championship fights here at the end of the year.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me on, bud. Have a great day.